And we're back on Global TV Talk Show. Today is Thursday. It's the 25th of January, and it's started off as a slow month, but boy, the past 10 days, it has just been a rocket blast for me anyway. I hope for you guys too. So this is a Global TV Talk Show, uh, which is a teleconference on wheels, if you will. And we go across borders, across cultures, across time and space, across industries, and across silos, bringing people into what I lovingly call my happy place, the global meeting room. And this has saved my ass after COVID shut down my 30 years of doing live meetings. And so I've been practicing on some of you how to be a happy TV talk show host. And we've gotten really good tips from some people. And let's welcome Paul Falcone and Sergey Gorbatov. Paul is, where are you, Paul? Are you in LA?
I'm in LA right now, Ed. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, you sound awful. What's up?
Well, thank you. No, I'm feeling fine, but I appreciate you sharing that.
I know. No, I thought you had a throat virus that's going around here. So
I want to see this backtracking here, Ed, on how Paul sounds awful.
Yeah, let's do that, Gary. I like that idea too.
I might cut that out with a what? Okay, everybody from Madrid. Here's Sergey. Are you in Madrid or are you on a workcation right now?
I'm in Madrid.
Oh, okay, good.
Which many people would consider a workcation.
Right.
Yeah, right. Well, some people would think San Diego would be a workation, but it's been foggy and rainy and windy.
But I hope you're okay with that weather down there, Edwin. It's been terrible from what we've been reading with the flooding.
Yeah, not where I am. I'm in Seaport Village in a very secure place, but out in the burbs, especially in lower lying areas where the hills are, the rain came right down. So in that, we've had a major rainstorm here, and that it hardly ever happens in San Diego. It happens up north, Northern California, but all of a sudden now we're getting it.
Is it worse than last year?
Yeah, well, it was 2 days ago. Yeah. And we're joined by Tatiana. Thank you for coming again, Tatiana. Welcome to the program. This is Tatiana Saint Germain. Are you related to the city in Paris?
In Wisconsin?
Yeah, in Paris, Saint Germain and the football club.
Oh, yes, the name did come from Paris. Yes.
Oh, that's very cool. So, everybody, this is Tatiana Saint Germain. She has a company called Great People, Great Results. I think I may have screwed that up. Did I say it wrong?
You got part of it. Great People Management.
Great People Management. Okay, good. And she's a member of our press club. Thank you. And also been my guest many times. And we're going to talk with you first, okay? And about retention strategies. I'm reading this here. And leadership blind spots. And then we'll get to talent assessment too. So Tatiana, tell us about your company real quick. And then please address the idea of retention strategies in this crazy economic environment we're in right now in late January.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I was a few minutes behind because I just finished up my leadership development webinar. And I had quite a few people, and the conversation got kind of juicy and interesting. So
good.
I had to wrap up. Thank you for welcoming me, Ed. It's always good to be on your show. Good to see some familiar faces there. I'm Tatiana Saint Germain, Great People Management, where we do believe that great people make great companies. And when you have great people, you will achieve greater results. And what we provide is really information so that you can get those great people. We provide pre-employment assessments to help you hire the right people, put them in the right positions, including leadership positions. And we also do leadership development and executive coaching. So that addresses the aspect of great leaders and how great leaders will lead their companies to greatness. And that was the topic of the webinar that just concluded. And we were talking about retention strategies and how leadership development is actually impacting retention right now. And when I talk leadership development, it's also high potentials development. You know, the new generation coming into the workplace, over 2/3 of millennials are saying they would like more development. Generation Z, same thing. From what my research on generations, they want development. I've never met anybody fully engaged in losing. People want to be engaged in winning, but they don't know what they don't know. So it's extremely important, truly recognizing the uniqueness of each person so that you can create an authentic growth path for them, because that's what's going to stick. And when you do that, and this growth and development becomes part of the fabric of your organizational culture, that's when you can achieve better retention and you can start attracting better people. That's what we're all about.
Okay, let's go to Paul Falcone. Paul, have you met Tatiana before? I don't remember.
Let me think. Yes, I'm a client of Tatiana's. I give her my business exclusively, as a matter of fact, Ed. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Tatiana's.
I'm really happy to know that. Wow, that's great.
Well, you brought us together.
It's nice to be a link maker.
That's right.
Yeah. Remember that song, Matchmaker, Matchmaker?
From Fiddler on the Roof?
I'm not going to sing it.
I was hoping.
No. Joseph, are you a singer?
I have been known to warble, but people tend to disappear rather quickly.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering because you're from Dublin. So tell us about Face Facts. You wrote this book, but it's really a play on what your corporation is, ClearSight Communications. And your consultancy is based on helping people not get screwed up by false impressions and by looking at faces like, here I am, you know, and what do you see using me as your guinea pig here? I'm sure you see a guy who's got a suntan, not from yesterday or the day before, but we're in Cabo in 85-degree temp, and it was wonderful. And that's where the suntan is from. And so, but when you see people like John Verico hiding behind a beard and glasses, what do you see? I mean, I have to tell you that John worked for a long time in a very senior position in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So I've been vetted. But what do you see when you look at John, for instance, just off the cuff?
Well, John and I actually know each other pretty well at this point. We've had numerous conversations over the last couple of years. Wow. So with no secrets there. But any given face will reveal a lot of information. I work primarily with a 3,000-year-old Chinese tradition, which has been used over, literally over the documentation goes back over 3,000 years. And the understanding is that our static facial features reveal a huge amount of information about character, personality, behavior style, how people communicate, both in terms of how they receive and process information, as well as how they then communicate externally, stress triggers and responses, genetic influences. I learned it as a diagnostic tool initially, as one of the diagnostic tools used in traditional Chinese medicine. But I also work with a lot of other things, body language. I've done a lot of online training with former FBI trainers. So I've worked a lot I've studied a lot around interrogation, negotiation, elicitation. So I combine a lot of different strategies and techniques together, because just looking at static facial features gives a lot of information, but I always want to look deeper and make sure I have a very clear understanding of who I'm dealing with and why and what they're about. And then, of course, what the client needs.
Okay, we're going to go around everybody, back and forth, in and out. So I want to now introduce Barry Coleman, who's also in LA, has an entertainment industry background as well as foreign service. But today we're going to focus in on a related topic to what we just started talking about. And I'm going to read this: emotion, attention detection, and how AI fits all that in. So I'm having trouble saying it, never mind imagining what you do. So please, this is Barry Coleman.
Yeah, our company, we've been around for about 17 years, based on two guys who built a software 17 years ago at Oxford University that can detect up to 32 different distinct emotions in people via video camera. So if I was using our technology on this call, I would be able to detect the emotional state of every member of this call during the call, what you go through. We also have a way to detect what you're paying attention to, how much you're paying attention, how much you are likely to be receiving in that. We spent the early years really focused on the advertising industry and telling the advertising industry, do people love the polar bears when they buy Coca-Cola, or, does that make them buy more or less? But we've moved into now into what the technology was originally developed for, which is helping technology, your computer or anything else, understand human emotion. So with the development now of AI agents, we're involved with helping companies develop these essentially AI agents, which will be able to understand what emotional state you're in, to be able to react to that emotionally and create facial features that are humanistic and can respond to that, and then deal with you, respond to you, understanding your emotional state. So that's essentially what we do in a very, very tiny nutshell of something that's relatively complicated.
Okay, anybody want to ask Barry a question about AI? And
yeah, Barry, a fourth grade example of that. What can you give me as an example so this farm boy from Idaho can understand?
Okay, so well, like I said, the easiest way from the advertising business that we still run, that's still a large part of our business. The idea again is you have someone view an ad. We get statistical relevance. We'll have anywhere from 500 to 1,000 people view that ad, and we can tell, as long as we have the right spread of people, what the likelihood of people buying that product is. What their emotional connection is to it. Do they pay attention to the ad? And we give them diagnostics that allow them to tweak the ad to make it more powerful. On the other side, like I said, what we have moved into, which was always the long-term plan of the company, is is something as simple as Siri. When you have Siri on your phone and you ask Siri, what, just like I asked this morning, when is the FedEx office open? Instead of it pulling up data and then showing it to you, there will be a person's face there that you have selected. That person will speak to you and ask you exactly, what do you want this? What else can I do? It will interface with you as sort of a virtual assistant, and we're helping to develop that technology's ability to interact with you, not just transactionally, but emotionally, from an emotional perspective. So we can recreate emotion expressions in these faces, and we can also help them understand what your emotional state is. So when it talks to you, if you're confused, it would say something like, I see you're confused. Would you like me to explain other resources or take you to somewhere else so that you can understand this better? That would be an example.
I have a question.
Yes, Tatiana.
Stoic faces.
Yeah, actually, it's funny because yeah, we do a lot of business internationally. We're probably the best. We have more than 1 billion impressions in our data lake, which includes almost all countries in the world. We do a tremendous amount of business in Japan, and in Japan, we understand that in the Japanese culture, emotions are essentially a factor of 10 times more muted than Western faces. And so we have to actually ratchet up the sensitivity on our technology to be able to get that finesse into stoic faces like you're talking about. And we also, when it comes to the AI agents, in developing this technology, we're developing it not just in a way that will give a single set of emotions, but we also study introverted people and stoic people so that the technology can be adjusted to have an AI agent who's a stoic, or an AI agent who's extremely expressive and perhaps more like an Italian and waves its hands and really interacts with you that way. So that is something we do take into consideration. And we're actually running a program in LA right now where we're studying introverts and stoicism.
I didn't think LA had any introverts.
Barry, I'll volunteer for the Italian contingent if you need that. Just call me anytime. Hey, Barry, I do have a question though. How much of what the scanning, how much of it is it the eyes as opposed to the rest of the facial features and stuff? I mean, is the eye, does it focus primarily on the eyes, just out of curiosity?
It's
or?
focused mostly on what are called micro expressions. I'm sure Joseph knows what this is all about. The micro expressions of the face, that there are literally thousands, and very, very small changes in micro expressions can mean very deep things. So that's that primarily is on that. We do focus on the eye as well, but the eye is really the key to attention and confusion, and to subtler cues about emotion that that just aren't as obvious. So, you know, the eyes rolling or the eyes doing some things will give hints, but the micro expressions tell much, much more.
So I want to get to John and Annette. I want to get to Sergey Gorbatov, who's an author and recently retired from AbbVie, Latin America HR leader, and is now in his own shop. He's an author, as I mentioned, of a book about feedback. And how do you view feedback from this discussion's point of view, Sergey, looking at people? Are they telling you the truth and giving you feedback, or are they trying to pull something over you?
I haven't noticed any feedback towards me directly, or otherwise I might have misinterpreted that. But what was really going through my mind is the AI's ability to give feedback, and AI's ability to do much more in the realms of performance and talent management. Just last week, we published an episode on our podcast about AI writing performance reviews. So we already have that practice with many managers, just asking AI to do performance reviews. But what we say is that, yes, your ChatGPT can do that. What it can't do yet is to diagnose the problem, just because it's too contextual. So for now, that is still with the manager. But going forward, and for specific jobs, particularly if your job is constantly on the phone, like for call center agents, if there will be any in the future, AI probably will be doing more and more of managerial responsibilities, and we need to rethink what the future of work will look like when AI is no longer a tool that we use now and then, but actually a partner or maybe a master. And from that perspective, you know, our second book that's coming out in May will be looking at the modern approaches to careers. So now for everyone, if such drastic shifts are going to occur in the workplace, then how can we democratize career management? And because the big organizations keep telling employees, you are the owner, you're the captain of your career. And then when Great Resignation happened, the companies say, no, that's not what we meant. You are the captain of your career in this organization, and until we tell you so. So that dynamic also needs to change. So very interesting and very diverse thoughts that I'm taking from this conversation.
Okay, we're going to circle back to you about the edge and how people can get the edge from what you're teaching. Kim Condon has been on our program a few times, always courtesy from Paul Falcone. Thank you very much. And Kim's background is varied, meaning goes wide and deep. Global talent, global HR for Herbalife Nutrition, $5 billion company here in LA. And but her background also includes a stint at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. And so we're talking about face and facial stuff. What's your take on how that applies to the movie business?
Yeah, that is a very, very heated topic, because, you know, someone's image being used that's how they get paid, right? I mean, I don't know where this is going to end up, but that's why the writer strikes, actor strikes, things like that. It's specifically over that. And honestly, and I'm not the most pro-union person in the world, but that one I totally get. It's a challenge, and be able to protect your own face. It's pretty dramatic times that we live in. Your face, yeah, it's out in the public, but it's still something that you use to make your living. So very topical, Ed, and we'll have to see where it ends up.
So none of us are lawyers, I think, but Barry, maybe you want to jump into this from your experience back at Sony, but my point is that a face is a trademark then, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, this is more relevant to what I do now because we actually film actors here in LA with using AI. So we are the devil in the details, and we are the we came under a lot of scrutiny during the strike because people were concerned exactly about that. And I have to agree with Kim that from our perspective, we use facial coding to create what we create. So we're not taking people's images or lifting it. We're simply using it to understand how the face moves and then being able to recreate that. But there are a lot of people out there with AI that are doing 3D scans of people, paying them a couple $1,000s and saying, we own that forever. That's an existential threat to acting as we know it. There's no question. And we absolutely stood with the union during the strike and agreed with it. It's hard to do. I mean, it's probably unusual to say from our position, but we actually agree with that, and we've strived to pay people extremely fairly, and like I said, be extremely explicit about the fact that we don't use their likeness. But there are lots, and what we found during the strike is there were at least 10 other AI companies in LA who were lifting people's images during the strike, and even before that. So I think that the Academy's, I mean, not the Academy, but SAG's ability to negotiate that is hyper important. I don't think there was anything more important in the strike than to get that. I think largely they got that. I would argue that they did very poorly against the streamers, that the agreement that was finally written didn't actually address the one critical issue that they needed to address, which is also an existential problem because it has to do with residual revenue, and that's what most actors live on. So then that's the threat for right now. AI is the threat for the future. So I think the agreement they have for AI is a good beginning. It's a good start. It's not complete because we don't know where it's going to go. We don't know how quickly movie companies are going to go to using all AI actors. But today that you're not getting the streaming revenue or the residual revenue that you weren't getting before. So that's the money in the pocket thing that I think they missed. But like I said, from an AI perspective, absolutely the right thing to do to focus on making sure that they have their rights and that if your image is used, you get paid. And by the way, there's an upside to it. I'm sorry, I don't want to go on. There is an upside to this, and that is the upside is imagine that you're an actor and you're in your mid-20s, and let's face it, we're the way society works, we're never going to look better than we are when we're about 25 years old. But imagine freezing yourself at that age and having a scan of yourself at that age and being able to do movies forever and have them use your image and pay you for your image, even if it's not you. And that's just money in your pocket as they come along and do it. You can still create your brand and do your thing. But if it's done right, AI could actually be extra money in the pocket for actors that might not get it otherwise for a much longer period of time.
So then I could keep my tan that I have right now on the screen.
That's correct. You could have the tan forever. You'd be the
and you won't damage your skin, and you'll have the tan without damaging your skin.
No, I use 100 block. Neutrogena.
But Barry, I mean, it really goes back to the same thing as what you were saying with the streaming. And it is unfortunate on the streaming piece. I think, they fought a good fight. And again, it's weird for us to be on that side of the fence, but in this one we are. as long as the residuals are in place from the image standpoint, then you're right. I mean, it could increase their livelihood, and also from a worldwide distribution standpoint and all of that. So that's very interesting, and good point.
Got to
So
go
I'd like
to
have some
Dr.
positive, yeah.
Yeah, I got to go to Dr. Natalie. Welcome in to this discussion. Dr. Natalie, PhD, is an expert at providing transformational guidance for women and others. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I love this conversation because I'm a historian by trade as well. And so I hear there's a lot of worry about AI. And there are two things that I always wonder about. Isn't it just an evolution of what we have seen a few years ago? I'm thinking Photoshop. You know, that prime example where we have a pizza and we turn it into a beautiful young lady in a bikini. And the same, you know, with the voices. And you know, when I say just, of course, it's an evolution, yes. But I'm also wondering about, I was in a movie theater a couple of weeks ago, and there was an advertisement. And the voices, you know, you see somebody, a politician talking, and you know they're not saying what is being said on a screen right now. You know, we used to call it just synchronizing or, you know, dubbing. And I feel like now we're saying it's AI. It's his voice, but he's saying, so what is the connection between the way we used to do it and the way it's being done now? It doesn't seem that different. It just seems a little more hype. Am I making myself clear?
Okay, who wants to talk?
I'll jump in and say a few things. You know, I just came from past 15 years working at the Department of Homeland Security, and we looked at a lot of these issues with deep fake and all of this stuff. As a matter of fact, I wanted to go back to some of the other folks who had talked earlier too about you know, malintent and all of that. We used various types of facial studies and other types of gross movement studies and other things to see if we can determine whether somebody had the intent to do harm. Kind of really bizarre theory of train of thought. But as technology has continued to increase, I mean, I know the government was always kind of antsy about, you know, when Photoshop came out, because you can fake photographs. And for the longest time, we were not allowed to issue any photographs that had been modified in any way, shape, or form, because, you know, you're supposed to be issuing the truth. And if you change an image, you know, it is no longer the truth. And then, you know, as things progressed, you saw movies like Forrest Gump, you know, where, you know, he's inserted with JFK and all this other stuff. And it's like, wait a minute, he obviously wasn't there, but we now have the technology to recreate historic scenes and put people in. And we're doing it for entertainment purposes, and that's one thing. But when people start doing it for other reasons and to forward political agendas and other kinds of things, then we're starting to get into a real ethical concern. And now voiceover artists are starting to feel the crimp here too, because their voices can be completely mimicked. And then you get the criminal element who's taking people's voices that you know, they call on a scam call and you're talking and you're trying to get off the call. Well, they now have recorded your intonations. They can recreate your voice and call your grandmother and say, hey, I'm in trouble, you know, and I need cash. And, you know, grandma's like rushing out to Western Union to send off some cash. So there are so many sides of this thing that is, you know, I'll be honest, it's got me a little nervous. There are some great potential uses for this technology. And at the same time, there are so many areas that we need to be concerned about. And I think it could impact a lot of people's careers in a lot of different ways. I don't know if certain career types are going to go away. I think the performance industry is really terrified here because this is where, like it's been brought up, this is people's livelihoods. This is their, their bread and butter. And it may be great. There may be companies now that are sitting go, sure, we'll pay you residuals for using your image in the future. But at some point, somebody's going to put clauses in these contracts and say, 4 or 5 years. And then after that, it's ours.
Yeah.
Okay, I
really
need to move on. This is Annette in Germany, and then we're going to go to Ken Lloyd in LA and Annalisa in England.
Yeah, so I really would like to add something what you just said, John. I am not afraid of new technologies, and I think that there is always a good and a bad thing about them. Only some weeks ago, I've been at a conference that is called HufiCon, so it means Human Firewall Conference. And it wasn't only that people called grandmas, they called companies and pretended to be the CEO and asked employees to do really important things. And then also know some companies who had lost a lot of money, who were not, who couldn't be reached because those persons kind of had killed the internet and every connection. And I was really astonished because so far I had believed more in the good side of this. And when I'd attended this conference, since then I know how important it is that we as humans really find a way how to connect to each other and how to trust each other. And so at present, I see many very important things. One is that we trust each other, and the other one is that we have more peace. And for me, peace doesn't start somewhere far away. It starts already in companies. We don't fight with fists in companies, but with words. And in such a time of transformation, it's so important to be peaceful and appreciative, to really, so that the company will benefit from each employee. And this is also easier to find employees for the company. And in my opinion, we as entrepreneurs and leaders, we also have the responsibility to be more peaceful and to give this peaceful and appreciative attitude to our employees, so that when they come home in the evening, that they are more in a peaceful state than maybe an aggressive one. And I also remember it from my own work in companies, that when I came home, I was kind of upset about my boss, about colleagues, and so on. And so these for me are the two things that we as humans, with our emotions that we have, that we should really focus much more on, to have a world in which we all love to live.
So Annette, we're going to circle back to you so we can talk about effectiveness and strategies connected with all that. Gary Sanger, what have you heard here that fits exactly what you're doing today in your executive recruitment business?
Well, it's really from A to Z, and it's a pleasure to be here. I reflect on a story from last Saturday. I'm a member of a men's group in our local Christian church. Men's group of 8 of us went to something called Santa Clarita Grocery. It was acknowledged as being one of the best nonprofits in all of California by Senator Wilk. And a quick story is, especially with Joseph and John's and Barry's first impressions, what your face looks like, what it's telling you, etc. We were giving out a variety of groceries, basic staples to 60, 70 families that were on really the basics of what they needed food for. And so these 60 families came, and they were carefully checked out prior. They checked in. Those that could paid $10 for the food. I reflect on maybe the second or third family that came in, and these were 2 young ladies, probably in their 40s. And I said, where are you guys from? And I knew, because as I went into the Air Force a week after high school, I was trained in the Russian language. And I was basically on planes spying the sky. I did that for a long time. And the lady first said, look, I'm from Russia and my friend here is from Ukraine. I then started to speak Russian a little bit, that's a long time ago. And they were kind of really taken back. And in that conversation, and my point here is I want to stay away from too much of the first impressions and make a lot of conclusions from that. And so the lady, I said, what do you do now? She says, I'm in the social services area. I basically volunteer. And the other lady said she worked as a housekeeper. I said to the first lady from Russia, I said, what'd you do before? Now, if I was given 100 guesses, I would not have guessed that she was a cardiologist and a cardiovascular surgeon. And she had 2 sons that were still serving in the military. And one son here was in high school with this other friend in Taft High School in San Fernando Valley. I tried that. My lesson from this was I was humbled. I mean, we here in the US, if bombing happened and we were to end up in another country, my goodness, life would be incredibly different. But as I do executive search, and I've been doing this at the end of this year will be 25 years, I try to stray away from making too many initial impressions, good or bad, because I don't want to be fooled. I have a client that pays us a lot of money to go help fill their senior management and executive jobs. I have candidates, we have to make sure it's a big win for them as well. And so these extra tools are wonderful. It's when I have that conversation with someone that the words don't match what the facial expression or the body expression is, and I fully explore it and try to understand it. I'm humbled from the story about the 2 ladies and, they needing this food. I told the next lady and her 3 young boys, sorry, you can't come in here. So they stopped, started to turn around. And I said, without giving me knuckles, we have to have knuckles as the password here. And peace, happiness, come on, we all put our shoes on the same way. I'm really touched by this discussion and how we and all of us can get much better at it.
Thank you, Gary. Don't go away. We need you to come back in. Dr. Ken Lloyd, tell us about wellness at work based upon what you've just heard.
It's a really interesting question. As I listened to Joseph and Barry, Kim talking, I kind of sense a combination of themes coming across. Wellness at work, obviously, it's our role as employees, as managers, as owners to do whatever we can to help employees maintain their physical and mental health. What I researched in part was the workplace and weight gain, what's going on there. And there is a very strong correlation between the two. And as people work, there's something called the Office 15, and it's researched. After a few months, one study showed that 44% of female hires gained at least 15 pounds. So it makes you wonder what's going on in the workplace and what can we as managers do to help people, to listen to them, to know what's going on with them physically and mentally, and do what we can to help make our workplace safe in every respect. And so that means taking a look at work areas, taking a look at how much people are sitting. We know that sitting is the new smoking. I mean, I use a desk riser personally and implemented that in the company where I was VP of employee planning and development. Across the board, the employees loved it. And what can we do just to deal with ways to improve wellness at the work? Stopping these constant parties where we have nothing but junk food out there, taking a look at the stress people are experiencing, and maybe providing them with some support in mindfulness and in exercise, and convincing them, hey, walk around a little bit. If you need to go to the restroom, don't go to the one across the hall, walk to the other side of the building. When you're commuting, we know people are going back to work. Commuting, 70% of the people that commute are eating while they commute, and they're not eating healthy foods. And when we're under stress, today's jobs are more stressful, they're more sedentary. So what do people do to help deal with that? Comfort foods, to ease the stress, gaining weight all along the way. So really, as managers, and I really sense a theme going across here, focusing on people, focusing on individuals, helping them, providing them coaching, guidance, and support, and caring for them, again, as individuals. You know, and when I think of this, the concept of facial recognition also comes to mind in the area of safety for all of us, because we all fly, is with the TSA. And I know the TSA employees have gotten some facial recognition training. And I think that is so important, as certainly as Joseph was saying, it's scientific, it's real, there are things that can be done. And frankly, you know, I'm thinking, you know, TSA and what Barry said, and what certainly what Joseph said and what Kim said. All right, there was just a recent situation where a person in the Screen Actors Guild was getting on a plane, and he was stopped because he hadn't declared, I think it was a $20,000 or $30,000 wristwatch, a famous actor. And I'm just wondering if the face tipped it off. I mean, we all know when people are doing this, no, I'm probably not telling the truth. Here they're pondering, and you know, they're putting up pieces in front of them. They'll put a lot of books in front of them because they want to deflect anything you might be saying. But there's so much more to the science of it that talk about making the workplace safe, making it safer for people who get on airplanes, assuming the doors are bolted on properly, but that's a separate topic. Anyhow,
So-
big
so-
picture, that's really it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you wrote a book, is it, about jerks at work?
Oh, yeah, it's my autobiography. Not really. Yeah, I had, years ago, I had written a newspaper column giving workplace advice. And it was amazing how many people out there were writing in about jerks, if you will, that they were working with. And there are so many varieties of them that I put together a couple of books on how to deal with them, whether it's the nonstop talker, which I don't want to be right now, so I have to keep this short, or the abuser, the harasser, you know, the bully, all of those, and they're still out there. And they even can do it virtually, which is rather remarkable. But again, keeping the workplace safe, making sure that jerk-like behavior is identified, it's investigated, and proper steps are taken to deal with it, to keep the place fair and frankly safe for everybody.
So, Annette, I know that we've had a lot of discussions, and I'm very excited for you and your new venture. If you care to talk about that at all now, go right ahead. But what about being effective with teams? And do you mean teams remote or all in the same place?
Oh, there's a difference if it's remote or if it's in person. So I really agree what you said, Ken, that it's so important to really take care of the people. And so also for teams, it starts with let's say a good environment with a positive atmosphere. And what you just said, it's also possible to, for example, have a team meeting being out in nature, or even have let's say some team exercise, something for team development, to be in nature and to try out other things. To really be effective, it's so important to appreciate the other person. So, and everything starts with myself. So when I look in the mirror, and if I'm going to blame myself, or I don't know what, I criticize myself, then it's probable that I will criticize other people as well. But when I'm kind of content with me and myself, and when I know that each of us and everybody else is just a wonderful person, then it's much easier to have a good team atmosphere. And with such an atmosphere, it's like you know, good sports teams. And when good sports teams really have a good connection to each other, or you can also take an orchestra, if they really listen to what the other person is playing or is saying, then that's really how teams are going to be effective. The most time in teams is lost with arguing and with questions like whose fault is it that we didn't perform, who started the quarrel, and who's right and who's wrong. And if we would leave out these times, I'm convinced that teams will be more effective, at least 30–50%, something like this. And they will be not more effective, they will be happier. And this is kind of a positive spiral upwards, because happiness contributes to more effectiveness and to more joy and to more motivation and yeah, to be really kind of in the flow with the whole team.
Okay, so I'm going to stand up. I think everybody should stand up for a minute on this medical thing. And let's go to Dr. Natalie for a second, then Gary Sanger, and maybe two of you can discuss the mental aspects of preparation for a hiring interview.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting turn of events. Yes. Before that, I want to also mention emotional quotient, because we rely so much on the IQ. And I think, you know, as Dr. Lloyd was pointing out, as Annette was pointing out, and as we're talking, we need to have a combination. And so if we're talking about how to manage people, you know, I want to lead people, I think it's better than managing them. And we need to create that atmosphere of trust, right? And that trust and that authenticity actually already starts in the interview process. I know one company a little more in depth, and they have started to see about using VR in their hiring processes. And just last week, I asked the overall HR manager, I said, you know, how is that going? And the response was, yeah, well, we're not using it for everyone because we still need to make sure that on the emotional level, that person will actually fit with the team. And I think that's really crucial. And I think that's also what, you know, what Joseph mentioned earlier, what Barry mentioned, and Tatiana and others. It's like, it's a combination. It's what can I tell from looking at you? What can I tell from the way that you're using your hands? Are you paying attention or not? And then there's the other piece. What does your voice do? How do you answer the question? And are you honest? And that you can't see that right at the start. You know, you got to ask a few questions to get there. And I think when it comes to leadership and to hiring people at this point, and especially to retain them when they are stressed, when they are overeating, that's when we need to approach them and be using a little more empathy, understanding, support, and talking to them. So I think, you know, that's a connection that I would draw between what we've been talking about thus far.
Really interesting. And Paul Falcone, I know you speak German, and if you'd like to address our German friends here in German and to the German people who will watch this TV show next week.
But then they'd all be critiquing my German, Ed, is my problem. But you know, I like the way you're thinking. Yes. I'm Italian. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and I have a master's degree in German. So it's a long story, but thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yay for Italians from Brooklyn. I am
Yeah.
too.
Are you really? Good for you, John. Glad to hear it.
Wow, that's cool. Okay, Gary, hiring practices for leader succession. And what are you hearing here that relates to what you're working on now?
We have a mid-size entrepreneurial company that's the grandfather founded it. His son ran it for 20, 30 years, and now his grandson is the president, CEO, owner. We're looking for their top financial accounting person. What I'm hearing is, I mean, the culture of what fits. I mean, my objective is to make it a winner situation for the client, pays the fee, has the job, but equally for that candidate as to what he or she is looking for. And so an interview an hour ago was with a very well-accomplished senior financial person. His arrogance arrived about 10 minutes before he did on the Zoom. And exactly, John, shake your head and say, well, and then, you know, play games with what's right for me. And I'm not going to tell you anything about my compensation. And I don't want to reveal that about what's not working now. I think the simplicity of where you fit, are you hands-on enough? I mean, this company is in the 50 million range today. They were 30 million 2 years ago, pre-acquisition. They'll be 80 to 100 million here in 3 to 4 years. So are you the kind of person that can really get your hands dirty with all the accounting, cost, supply chain stuff. Kim, you would know lots about all of that. Or do you have to be in the sophisticated, don't get your hands dirty, and you got mates to do that? So the culture piece, my goodness, it starts there. And if you, I mean, I grew up in the world's best company. I didn't know how great it was. This was American Hospital Supply Corporation and Foster McGaw. Those of you that have any familiarity with Northwestern University and McGaw Hall, you know, he gave tens of millions of dollars for that. His very simple thing was, way back when, if you don't think this guy or gal is somebody that you can bring home to supper, don't hire him. Now, isn't that cool? The more sophisticated we get with all these other tools, and I buy into them, let's go back to the basics. Do you really fit in? So I want to stay with the idea of culture, who you are, and how is the fit.
I don't know what to say. Sergey, take over.
I would be keen to hear Gary's view on this succession drama that we're watching right now, and I'm talking about Disney, because Bob Iger failed to create a robust succession pipeline, and he's still being rewarded with new CEO contracts and exorbitant executive pay. So, and this is something that I'm wrestling with myself, you know, should I help organizations or shall I help individuals? Because we can help individuals as much as we can. We can get them to eat healthy and take care of themselves. But if they still work in bad organizations, it's like you take a fish from a dirty pond and you clean it and send it to a leadership program, and then you put it back into the dirty pond. How long will it take to get back to the old habits? So that's one thing. And another thing that I was
Sergey, that's still a dead fish, right? In the clean water,
pretty much
and
aligned.
have the nutrients or the dirty water.
And you know, this AI, it's spooky. I just got a Zoom notification. Confirm your speaking language, German.
I got that too. I just X'd it out.
Yeah. People are listening. So that was one point. And another point that I wanted to make is about the actors, protests, and how I think so. Image and voice are means of production, right? So just like the Luddites were against new means of production, and just like taxi drivers lost their means of production when Lyft and Uber came in. So why is it different? Why is it different in principle? So why are we protecting one category of workers while not doing anything about others? I mean, I understand what will happen without Netflix, what will we be doing with our free time. But I think that we should be consistent in how we look at things that are happening systemically.
I don't think it's livelihood, it's humanity. So there's a distinction when you lose the livelihood as an Uber driver, but here it's the humanity of it. When a production company uses somebody's image, you've all probably seen Black Mirror episode with Salma Hayek. You know, that's a good example of what could happen if we don't put barriers in place. And
oh, totally. But I believe that in the future we won't need actors, because we'll have AI generated voices and faces that we'll fall in love with, but they'll be totally digital. So why would we need actors in the future? And that's the question that we need to be asking, you know, because we saw how bank tellers got eradicated by ATMs, gone. So they say, okay, actors, now AI will be, and we need to find, they need to find other things to do, and they have many talents. So
the flaw in that, Sergey, in terms of whether actors will be replaced, is that AI actually is as brilliant as it can be and as pretty as it can be. My company is out there leading the charge to do exactly what you're talking about. But the problem is AI simply copies. It copies in an extremely sophisticated manner. It does not create. So the things that we consider to be brilliant performances are usually things where actors have turned a piece of work on its head, where they've come at it in a way that's completely innovative and completely off of what has been done before. That AI cannot do that, and that's why certain things in art and in the dramatic performances can't be completely replicated, even with the most sophisticated AI.
Yeah, there's another, that's a perfect example, but there's another piece to that too, which is, okay, people are connected to actors because they're people. That's why like all the trades and all the rags and all of that are a huge, huge part of acting. And you can't do that with AI. So, that celebrityness, I don't think that's going anywhere. It just keeps on getting bigger and bigger.
Exactly where I was going, Kim. You can't relate to a robot or just an image, and no matter what you can do. And so there's so much we're talking. It was brought out the fact that that kind of standing on end, that outstanding performance that really draws out a character and makes a character lovable and timeless and all that great stuff. If you look at the stuff that's being mass produced today, you're not seeing much of that anyway, because they're not given the opportunity to really put themselves into it. And people are finding only the connection to actors and actresses not by their performance, but by whatever other celebrity that goes with it, right? All the stuff that comes out about their personalities, about their home life, about the things that they do on the outside, the things that make them human. And I think we've touched on so many cool things in this conversation, and all of these are critical. And the number one thing of all of it is trust. And I'm sorry, but if you're not a real person, I don't trust you. And I've been on several calls recently, and people are pushing using AI to make your sales calls or to make your discovery calls and all of that stuff. And you can get more people scheduled and more potential coaching clients because we can automate all of this stuff. I'm sorry, when I get a robot calls me on the phone, I know it's a robot. And I don't care how human it sounds and how well they're responding to me. It's not a human connection. And without that human connection, I don't have the trust factor. And so those are so critical. There are elements here that are so important. If you want to keep people, or you want to motivate people, you want to have people, you want to retain good people, is you need to keep them motivated. They need to feel like they're making a difference. They need to feel like they matter. And they don't if they don't feel they're trusted, if they're not given opportunity, if they're not respected as an individual, and respected for the talent and the skill that they bring, and if they're not communicated with, and they don't communicate back to you. And finally, the last piece of it is that humanity factor. And if they're not treated as, or they don't feel as if they're looked at as a human being, they're not going to really want to put forth the effort. They're going to get burned out. They're going to have that. They're going to need that stress food, all that kind of stuff. And all of those things, trust, opportunity, respect, communication, and humanity, that's my acronym actually for TORCH, which is what Share Your Fire comes from. That's what I do, is I try to help people to find those things or create those things in their workplace environment and in their life in general. But without those factors, you're just going to stagnate.
Thank you very
Love
much.
To jump in there, if I may.
Oh, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah, the trust one is a big one for me. Well, it's a big one for all of us anyway, but it's a big one for me. Over the last year, I've been dealing with a lot of people who have been conned, coming to me for advice. And they've been overly impressed by people who present very well, very articulate, very well dressed, very smooth, all of that. And it's where, going back to something Gary was saying earlier on, falling for first impressions. And we have to look beyond. We have to look beyond. But I also came across Professor Tim Levine recently, and he has the truth default theory. I don't know if you've come across it, but it's actually safer for us as a species to trust. Because if we're all in a place of mistrust or distrust, it just creates chaos. So where our natural inclination is when somebody presents us with an idea, presents themselves, is to trust them. But I always advise people, you know, the old Arab proverb, trust in God, but tie your camel. Always look beyond the surface.
So true.
I think that you're absolutely right, Joseph, and I see your face the facts certainly applying when you're interviewing candidates for positions, because what they're saying is can be quite different from what you're seeing beneath those words. And some people can be trained and schooled and polished in presenting it, just has been said. At the same time, you're seeing them deeper than that. What's a little scary to me, and I tend to be very trustful, trying to find the best in people because there's good in everybody. But we're living in what has been called the post-truth era. And there's so much fabrication out there. I want to trust, I want to believe, and I'm being told information by seemingly credible people that I know is not the truth. And whether it's in the media, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's even in hiring, and frankly, if there are ways to get to that deeper level, such as by facing the facts, that's a remarkable gift to all of us. And it's our ability, rudimentary as it might be, to read people that has helped us kind of survive reading people, reading situations, sensing this is not safe. I don't know why I get that feeling. That's our unconscious telling us that. Now you've brought it to a much higher level of science, which I think is very important. It even goes all the way back to keeping the workplace safe. You're less likely to bring someone in by using the approach that Joseph talked about than relying on more traditional techniques. So again, another safety factor as well.
I want to turn the conversation to leadership blind spots. Tatiana, if you and Paul Falcone could have a bit of a dialogue here, of course, everyone can jump in. Tatiana?
I wanted to segue into that by continuing what Joseph said about how we're wired evolutionarily to assume because we have to. So whether it's assume to trust or make assumptions because we have to make sense of the world around us. Otherwise, there's no predictability involved in our world. So that's why on the hiring side, you always see that in the first, 4 seconds, you make a positive or negative impression, and the rest of it is confirmation bias. And therefore, you need to use better, more reliable information to match people to jobs. But this also applies to leadership blind spots. We don't even know who we are ourselves. We only know who we have become in order to cope with the demands of the position or to protect ourselves or just to be somewhat effective at life. And so in my leadership development discussions, that's the one thing that we start with is the leadership DNA. What is your unique style? Who are you? We are all 3 people in one, who you think you are, who other people think you are, and who you really are. So my goal is to figure out who you really are, because only then you can craft a more authentic path for growth. And this is where Paul and I partner on with his coaching clients. Paul?
Yeah, I was going to call you, Tatiana, because we met with someone about 3 months ago. And someone I'm coaching, I'm halfway through a 6-month assignment. And it's so funny, we have to go back to the PXT, self-assessment that you administered, because now after 3 months of doing this stuff, it's good to do it on the front end. And of course, what really matters is where you are at the end of the 6-month assignment, right? Is the delta, the gap, is it fixed? Is it at least moving in the right direction? But after so much feedback, you get to the point where we've got to go back to the basics, and you can keep coming back to that tool over and over again and saying, well, wait a second, remember when we talked about this, but we were looking at it at a very superficial level 3 months ago. It was just a matter of what your interests are and what but wait, now we're seeing challenges in the workplace. Now let's dig deep. Let's really figure out what this is, because to your point, Tatiana, it's all about, it's not what you do, it's who you are. It's the beingness that trumps the doingness, right? But we are a certain way, and because of that, we do certain things. I think we've got that mixed up in society. In society, we're all thinking about doing. Our hair's on fire, we're chasing our tails. We're asking the wrong sponsoring question. It's really a matter of who you are and who do you choose to be. And
Mhm.
and the tool that you've given us is something we can kind of keep circling back on. And each time you look at it, you find something new in there based on the circumstances. So, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. The executive coaching assignment, I wouldn't think of doing without Tatiana's help, because that's one of the sponsoring elements that they really need to understand about themselves to get their hand around who they are, who they choose to be. So it's great stuff.
Thank you.
I'm doing the commercial all day, Tatiana. That's it.
Okay, Dr. Natalie. Dr. Natalie has needed to go, I see. Okay. And our friend Natalie, not Natalie, Annalisa in England, it looks like she's not going to be able to do this right now. So let's go back to Sergey.
He's under
And
the weather.
yeah,
Oh,
she's
yeah.
had
Just having a coughing fit.
a voice issue today.
Yeah, I'm thinking about who you are, who you want to be, and what you're doing. People hire you, marry you, fire you, give you a bank loan because of what you do, not because of who you are.
Hmm.
So, and in my coaching assignments, I work with behaviors because first I think that you need months, maybe years of psychotherapy to change who you are, but it takes a couple of iterations of you doing a new behavior to have a positive impact on those around you and on yourself. Tatiana, Paul, what do you think?
I
If I
think
go ahead,
that what
Tatiana, you go first.
you do stems from who you are. And so what I do is different from what you do. And so when we say, how can you make coaching development stick? Is you start with understanding who the person is, and then you let them know that I'm not here to change you because people don't change. Like you said, it's psychoanalysis. I don't care how much you psychoanalyze or medicate somebody. People are who they are. And when you try to change who they are, it's an attack on who they are. What you help them do is change what they do, but it's tied to how they do it. So it's like a point of departure. You see, so you measure the point of departure, and for all of us, it's unique and different. And so now I know that the how I do it is going to be different for me versus for the other person. Well, we can arrive at the same destination, just it's choosing a different path. And both of us are going to be happy because we chose an authentic path.
I agree. I totally agree with that, Tatiana. Sergey, I'll give you a quick example. When I teach at UCLA Extension in the School of Business and Management, I always go through this exercise with the classes. And I tell them, tell me about your favorite boss. Don't tell me who it was. Don't tell me where. Just describe what made that person your favorite boss. And you start hearing the students raise their hands and say, it was someone who always had my back, who made me feel self-confident. Next student says, someone who had more faith in me than I had in myself. They challenged me to do things I didn't even think I was ready for. The third one talks about, oh, my boss really valued education. It's because of her that I went back and got my AA degree. Whatever it happens to be, the question then becomes is, are you describing their beingness or their doingness, right? And I know it's both, but really push, what are you ultimately describing here? And the initial reaction the students have is usually it's their doingness. It's what they did. And as they keep talking about it, some voice comes out that says, well, wait a second. Maybe it's their beingness that's triggering what they do. And there's the aha moment. The truth of the matter is when it comes down, who's your favorite boss? It's two things. It's character and it's caring. They want to work for someone they know cares about them personally. And they want to work for someone who they respect and more importantly, they trust. You put that into the configuration, no one's leaving. They're not going to leave for 20% to go elsewhere. Because if they've got someone who's helping them thrive in their jobs, because of who that person is, their character and their caring, they're not going to risk that, not for 20%. You may end up going to someone who spits fire and throws chairs. They're not going to take that risk. I've always used myself as the average bear. I've had very little turnover on my teams throughout the years when I was in HR. And I think that's something that's teachable, but you have to get to that aha moment because as a society, we're all killing ourselves with the wrong question. We're kind of always trying to focus on do. Sometimes you just need to breathe, sit back a little bit and think about that career introspection. Who am I being right now? Am I being someone else's favorite boss? Am I paying this forward? Everything else just aligns from there. So just my thought.
Kim.
Yeah, thank you. Because I wanted to touch on something that what Paul was talking about in terms of, favorite bosses and that kind of thing. To me, that thread was that person, that boss, was giving trust. There's always this focus on let's build trust. Like, we need people to trust us. Well, what are you doing to demonstrate as a leader that you trust the other person? And it doesn't work out every single time, but it works out enough, and it works, and it's so expansive because it's like a magnet for good people, right? Because they do want to work exactly what Paul said. They want to work for someone who they trust, and they have they appreciate their character. And I really think what John was saying in the chat about people are treating people the way that they are, right? And it's why there's always that debate about are leaders developed or are leaders born? Well, it is both, because if you're gonna, I don't believe, and this is my own belief, but I don't believe that people that have poor character are good leaders. I'm not saying they're not successful. Many are very successful, but they're never going to reach that, oh, this is the best boss I've ever had. My career did this. My company did this because of that leader, unless they have that character, which again, to John's point, means that they're acting in the way that they truly are, the authenticity that Tatiana talked about. So I just wanted to kind of wrap that up, because I think that's a critical point for me.
Now let's talk about your 3 Ps: people,
Absolutely.
performance, profit.
Yes, thank you. So I actually left Herbalife a little while back, specifically because I wanted to have the opportunity, A, to have more flexibility, and B, because I wanted to focus on the things that I really, really enjoy and that I think I can provide the most value, which goes to what's P3. P3 is people, performance, and profit. And it's really focus on the people. They will perform. And oh, by the way, when they're performing, there will be profit. So that people is definitely that first and most important piece. And so the kinds of assignments that I'm working on are all about the cultural development. There's a real tension right now, and dissatisfaction between labor or employees and the workforce. I mean, the market is very strange. It's very different than I've ever seen it in my kind of long career. There's, on the one hand, there's employees being inflexible, right? About the need for flexibility. It's like, well, if I'm not remote and I can't do whatever I want at any time, then I'm not going to work. And then there's employers, particularly ones that either are feeling like they've lost control, or maybe they're having some financial issues, that are doubling down on pre-pandemic types of practices, in terms of like be there 5 days a week, even though before the pandemic it was maybe 3 days a week. And it's this whole thing, and it's doing the opposite. It's doing the opposite of what both sides of this equation want, which is to have a fulfilling, productive, high performing, profitable organization. Because look, employees win when an organization is profitable if it's well run, right? So it really is in everybody's best interest. And it goes back to this whole thing around giving trust. So if I know that that you don't trust me, and I'm going to know it because you need to see me. Why? So I can waste 2 hours a day that I was using productively. And on the flip side, if you're not living up to that trust because you're actually not, being producing, that really throws the whole trust piece off. So I'm working on projects like that, working, with leaders and with employees, and it's a combination of getting people to kind of see those points of view and see how everybody can win. Really, that's kind of the stuff that I'm working on. It's
we have a few minutes remaining. I want to be sure we go around one more time, starting with Annette. So Annette, you wanted me to think about doing some things with you, and I'm very, very happy to do that. But first, talk about being effective from a German speaker's point of view. Strategic team playing and being effective, being remote as well as in office. Is there a difference?
No, and yes, I know that German effectiveness is kind of something that's known worldwide. In my opinion, it's not always the best to only look on effectiveness. It's better, and I completely agree with you or what you said, Kim, with the 3 Ps. I really love this. Because if I really focus on the persons and maybe their performance, but also their well-being, even though this might be sound a little bit unusual, that I'm interested in the well-being of people. At the same time, I think if people really feel secure and if they can trust their leader in this sense, that they don't have to be afraid that the leader might do something which will be against them. I think in these situations, if I have this, let's say, fundament of trust, then effectiveness, in my opinion, will be kind of a result. Therefore, it's so important to kind of, let's say, to change our point of view. We already had it in the discussion that it was about management. And I think that times are now changing from all the management by techniques to what I call, or what I love to say, to talk about leading by. And I have a dear colleague, and she has 5 things for leadership, and 2 of them are leading by dreams and leading by adventure. In my opinion, that's quite unusual in companies. And at the same time, I'm convinced that this is what many people want to have. It's not that all love this. There are always some employees who love this way to work together with each other. And I also love to say leading by peace. And I think if we will have a changed attitude in companies, which is going away from what I've experienced when I started working in corporate companies, that it was about control, it was about fulfilling the goals that I had, and all these things. And I've been head of marketing sales control for quite some time, so I know what I'm talking about. I think that today it's really changing also with the new generation. They cannot be motivated any longer only by a big sports car. They have other values. And I think if I'm honest with myself, I agree with these values. It was only that when I was brought up, I was told that it's so important to obey, and that it didn't matter what I thought or what I wanted or what my proposal was. And so I have to admit that I'm quite happy that I'm now living in these changing times. And I, as an older adult, I really would like to support younger people to really follow this vision, to have another kind of collaboration. And that's what really my talks, my speeches are about. And that's what I support companies with when I coach the people working over there. And there's another aspect that you also mentioned. You were talking about the fish. And we also have the saying in German that I translated word by word, that the fish starts stinking from the head. And therefore, I really prefer to work with company leaders to really change something. Because it has the most impact if I really start with those people who are responsible in the company. And I think that if people like us, if we come together and if we share our ideas and if there will be more of us, I'm quite sure that we can really have an impact and also can influence some companies for the not only for the better, but also to have better results and more effectiveness in the long run.
Thank you, Annette. And really thank you for your time and your insight. So Gary, you said you got to take off and we're going to end this in about 10 minutes or so. So do you want to sum up about what you're going to be doing next week?
Well, I don't know about next week, but I do know about this afternoon. If you think about what you have on your team, both senior management and executives, and you're really going to be candid about it, it gets, who's your worst? Who's not getting it done? You know, who's your leader? I think in terms of, I think it ought to be a perpetual strategic planning, succession planning discussion. I think that ought to happen all the time. And if I'm sitting in the corner office, this is controversial, I selectively only bring in 3 or 4 guys and gals to have that discussion. I don't want my above average or average folks being the ones that choose who gets hired. I want my top folks to see who's going to be hired. And then the senior management and executives you bring in, do they already have all their own playbook and they're going to do it their way? Many times that doesn't fit very well. But in much of what we're talking about here, are they coachable? Are they open to new ideas, new technology? And then given the general direction, let's go turn that scoreboard on and can they score? I'm a sports nut. I am an absolute sports nut. How many games would be very fun to watch without a scoreboard? Go give me that last 2 minutes of a game. And in my youth, give me the ball. Now on that, Kim, you're smiling. You get that 2-minute drill. You got a game that your company needs numbers to make that quarter, to make that year. Who do you depend on? I remember my favorite boss, and he gave me that first shot. I didn't deserve it. It was way too early in my career, but somehow or another, maybe my begging counted, but he gave me a shot at being that first HR director in a business that was going to grow from 5 million to 25 million in 1 year. He gave me that shot, and I wasn't even 30. That's my favorite boss.
Wow. Have a good day. Sergey, what Gary was just talking about was an edge. And that's part of your new coaching mechanism, isn't it? Is figuring out an edge for clients.
It's more than a coaching mechanism. It's a way how we manage your career. And basically what we did, we went to literature, our experience, and we figured out, okay, what are the behaviors? What are the career behaviors that will get you closer to success as you define it, no matter what? And you start with aligning to purpose. You need to figure out who you are, what your strengths are, where you're going. Then you need to plan your pathways, because there are many more ways how you can get the same thing. Then ask yourself, are you doing great work? Because if you're not doing great work, I don't care how great you are, is your job great? Then you need to be a rewarding colleague. Because today, if you are a brilliant jerk, you won't get very far. Well, actually you will, but that's sort of the malaise of our society. Are you developing well? Are you connecting to others? Are you making your work visible? Because very critical step. Many people do a lot and are great workers, but they're very poor personal branders. And then are you multiplying your options, and are you acing the transitions correctly? And then you repeat the whole cycle. So in a nutshell, that's what we teach now. And our book is coming out in May. We're very excited about that, and now planning all the activities around it.
So you and Angela again?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. That's very cool. Best of luck. Paul Falcone. I wanted to ask you about one of your leadership books, Leadership Defense. Defense against what?
I use the sports metaphors to speak to Gary. I know Gary stepped off the phone, but I have a book on leadership offense and leadership defense strategies. And the point is, you need both. You have to know how to grow them, motivate them, develop them, and coach them. That's the offense. You have to know how to hold them accountable. You have to do conflict resolution. You have to know how to discipline and terminate. That's the defense. Too many times I find it, people think there's only the carrot. That's all you need is the carrot. And I hate to say it, but sometimes you need a stick as well. Even if it's an 80-20, you still need to know how to handle situations when employees aren't either performing at the right level or their conduct is so atrocious that it brings down the rest of the team. So that was the approach in those two books.
Thank you. Barry Coleman, it's been really delightful to learn from you here in this impromptu meeting. You know, we don't script it, but we have notes, of course. And thank you for sharing. Tell us about your radical flex thing. What is that?
Yeah, I was just thinking it goes into earlier issues about company culture. One of the things that we have how can I say? I'm sorry. How we approach this. A lot of companies are demanding people come back to the office. They're demanding a greater control, a greater sort of micromanagement of their people right now. And we as a company are flying in the exact opposite direction. We believe in this culture of extreme flexibility, and in a time when, you know, when you're in AI and if I'm not Google or OpenAI or Meta or whoever, and I want to compete for AI talent, I can't compete with the money. OpenAI just offered all of the people working at Google on all their top engineers $10 million a year to come over to OpenAI. So we don't approach things that way because of that. We really approach it as to, you know, we take our unlimited holiday or PTO policy very seriously. We had a young lady come in, very talented AI professional. She was with us for 3 weeks, and she asked for 2 months off to address mental health issues, and we gave it to her. You know, fully paid for 2.5 months. And when she came back, she gave us 3 years of uninterrupted, absolute top talent productivity based on the trust that we built with her in being able to do that for her. We had another person who had been with us for 10 years who we gave 4 months so they could go walk the El Camino in Spain. And our only requirement for that person was that they send us a photo and video log along the way to show that we supported them and you know, let the rest of the company know that these were possibilities. So you know, right now we have a combination of both. We have a hybrid situation. People who want an office get an office. People who want to work from home, they work from home, and we are as productive as hell. We know statistically we're more productive now 3 years after the pandemic than we were before it. We just believe very, very strongly in this idea of letting adults be adults, holding people accountable for their production, not for their activities or their day-to-day process, and allowing, like I said, allowing grown-ups to be grown-ups, and we run the company that way.
Very briefly, Barry, what do you mean by the rise of AI agents?
Okay, that's you know, that's really the again the future of business, and it's what, like I said, we've really sort of pivoted to be a part of that. AI, these AI personalities, whether the initial ones are the things you think about, whether it's Alexa or Siri or other ones, and there are hundreds in the works right now. So one of the things that we don't realize is that there's this giant shift in cash and investment and money into the creation of these AI agents for these online personalities who will be your personal assistant, who will do things for your company or for you personally. And that is going to fuel the next 10 to 15 years in terms of technology.
Thank you so much. Joseph McGuire, I really appreciate your time doing this, and I look forward to having you on our program in Washington, D.C. next week. And John Verico also will be on our Washington, D.C. program. I'm really honored to have as my host partner a great global law firm by the name of Mayer Brown, and they're hosting us in their K Street digs. And we have as one of the keynoters, the Director of Public Policy for Samsung Electronics America. This attorney, her name is Rebecca Peters, will be there in person speaking to our audience, and on Global TV Talk Show, parts of that program will be videoed. So she's on the presidential team of writing the CHIPS Act. In other words, the reshoring of the semiconductor industry into, guess where, Arizona, right over there, and other places. Mainly it's in southeast of Phoenix. Huge billions and billions of dollars being invested. Anyway, she's going to be talking about the policy, semiconductor policy, and how it's going to further influence American productivity going forward. And we'll be recording that talk and then playing it. So Joseph, we talked earlier about the illusion of fixed identities, and what we've heard here is a lot of vagaries. So as we come to a close here, I'm sorry to leave this for last, but I think it's really interesting to end with the illusion of fixed identity, the relationships of people in a digital world, and something about authentic leadership. So I know you have insight from your meetings with Lee in Ireland. So could you take a couple of minutes here and talk about this?
Well, that's a
that's a mouthful.
Well, we tend to have the illusion of who we are. Most of us have an illusion as to who we are. We have this idea that we are this person, and we're not. And again, it goes back to, I think it was what Tatiana was saying, there's who we see ourselves as being, who others see ourselves as being, or us as being, and then who we really are. And there's a whole floating mix, and who we think we are in our head we're the only person who sees that. Nobody else sees us in that way at all, ever. So it is a great illusion as to who we really are. And the other thing, going back to Carl Jung, is we're all in a state of becoming anyway. We're never in a fixed state of this is me. We're always evolving. Our bodies are changing at such a rapid rate that we cannot be who we think we are anyway. So really, for me, it comes down to values. What are the values? And am I living by those values? Am I clear about those values? Am I living those values? Am I epitomizing them? And just going back to one of the themes about leadership, so often people who are promoted to a position or hired to a position of leadership are not qualified to be leaders. And one of the things I certainly experience, and I'm sure I'm by no means the only one here, is when I'm called into a company to help teams with their communication amongst themselves, I have to talk to the leader first, and I have to find out what the problems are. And when I ask the leader, how did you put your message across? How did you communicate with them? What did you communicate to them? I often find it so confusing that people couldn't be expected to perform at any kind of optimum level. So communication clear communication is central to cultivating trust, to cultivating respect, to cultivating performance. And if we don't get that bit right, coming from being very clear about our own values, we're going to create problems. It's just inevitable.
You know, I wish President Biden would get you on TV so you could explain to the American public that this is not a political show, but there's a bunch of Americans out there who aren't getting what's going on in part of the political world right now. And it's just like disconnect. And that happens in companies all the time, right? But you, all of us on the screen right now, and people who just left, should be out. Here I am pontificating, but should be out there risking something by saying, wake up, people. We have to change what's going on for the better. And the demonstration of your words and attitudes and performance today on this impromptu talk show, I think is historic. And I think the replay of this recording, which will be starting tonight, tomorrow morning, will be worldwide, because there's a lot to learn from this. I will have a transcript. I don't know how good, it's AI, but also an audio of this. Some people want to put, the things in their ears and go out running, listening to these broadcasts. That's not my cup of tea, but I know some people like that. So I thank you all for being with me, and I welcome you to come back again. We have a number of live programs that are developing. Some of you know that for 30 years, I only did live programs, and then pandemic hit on or about March 1 of 2020, and that wiped out money as well as practice from my life. And so I learned how to be comfortable doing this. John Verico, I know that you've mastered this as well. I'm now implementing,
right?
Yeah, so I'm now implementing video with the live meeting, and Washington will be a big case. I've done it twice before, one in London and one in New York, and there are problems, and I have not released those programs because it requires so much editing, and I'm not a tech, and I'm keeping it private because so anyway, the guys who are helping me in Washington at the law firm, they're techs, and it should be just perfect. As a matter of fact, John, maybe you want to participate on Monday early. I think it'll be your 10 a.m., my 7 a.m. And so we're going to do a screen test with the tech people.
I'll actually, well, as you know, I'll be in person.
Yes, I know. Yeah,
but on Monday I'll be speaking to a group of 1,000 middle schoolers on anti-bullying. So I will be.
That's more
I'll
important.
be in the middle. I'll be in the middle of that at 10 a.m. So I won't be able to join you for the tech
okay,
test.
good. Yeah, there'll be just me, of course, and the tech guy, and then two, maybe a third. As I mentioned earlier, I don't encourage slides on these shows because there's too many issues that can happen off, or sometimes it just works perfectly, but we just don't know, as I think you know. And so rather than risk getting screwed up in sound or imagery, we just try not to do slides. But some of the people in Washington have insisted on showing at least one slide. So I said, okay.
I'm not doing that to you, Ed. Just telling you.
Oh, okay, that's good. No, I've got a screen share that works most of the time.
It'll all be good.
Yeah.
I'm actually looking forward to talking to these kids on Monday because I think that's where we start with kids early. We can help to form those better behaviors and the better interactions with others, so that by the time they get to the workplace, they're not the bully bosses anymore. So it's been a great discussion. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No, thank you. So once again, on February 1, which is coming up next week, is our Washington meeting. And we have Reset London for April 23. It will be host sponsored again by the bank HSBC inside their headquarters. And then April 25, we're going to go over to Paris and do a meeting there, although that's still developing. I don't yet have a host sponsor, but we're working on it. Exciting news, we're doing 2 meetings in New York live and virtual as well, combined. March 14 is going to be in Midtown, right near Times Square, in an office building, and more about that later, March 14. And then sometime in late May or early June, Ernst & Young is going to host us for the second time inside their global center in New York area. And that meeting will be announced. And then also in June, for the first time, we're going to be doing a live meeting in Scandinavia, in Malmö, Sweden, which is a suburb of Copenhagen. And we'll be hosted by a customer who's been on our TV shows. She is a senior HR leader with a very large company, a global company called Air Liquide, which is oil and gas. And they have a facility in Malmö, Sweden, and that's where our meeting is going to be held. And then from there, we're very likely going to produce this kind of a show, live plus video, in Germany. And more about that later, Annette. But also in Geneva, and perhaps one other. So I'll keep you all informed. We will have a virtual component to all of those. So no matter where you are, you're welcome to join our talk shows. Hopefully in person. Take care. Thank you again.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks, Ed.
This has been good. Thank you.